Hello, I'm Jeff Crawford for Journo.com, and today we'll be talking about the 2016 presidential election. Yes, I know it's only 2014, but 2 years is close enough to begin the wild speculation and mudslinging required. Uh, for 2016, the campaigning has already begun for Hillary Clinton. She hasn't announced yet, but there is a large Ready for Hillary campaign already going on. They've made their presence known. In fact, I saw one of their bumper stickers today. Hillary Clinton, by and large, is the favored Democratic nominee. If she runs, she'll get it. She has 69% among Democrats would like to see her run, which is a pretty good majority in today's politics. In comparison, Joe Biden, the current VP, who's the usual current VP of the sitting president, is usually that party's incumbent candidate. He's only got 12%. Hillary Clinton looks to be the one to beat on the Democratic side. Emily Warren is another name that's come up. She's a senator. She's only running at about 9%. She's interesting because, like Hillary, she is a woman, which is a big factor. And she's got a solid record among conservatives, too, because she was a Republican until 1996 before becoming a Democrat. So she has some appeal across the aisle. But she only has 9% of the Democratic nomination. 99% among Democrats think she should run, compared to 69% for Hillary. So not very likely she could clinch the nomination if she ran. But she would have a shot at becoming president if she somehow managed to get the nomination. On the Republican side, the Republicans have been a party in disarray since Obama got elected. Obama's election, in large part, was a rejection of the Republicans' policies when they had control of both Congress and the White House. And since then, they've had sort of an uprising in their ranks, which is the Tea Party, which represents the socially conservative wing of the party. And the Libertarian Party is a sort of uprising amongst the people who don't care about social problems at all and just want to stay out, but care about financial issues. Their candidates are, they have a couple of candidates that might have a chance. It might be solid picks, but they all have things the public might find wrong with them. The first of these, Jeb Bush, has a pretty solid record as governor of Florida. The state's ranking among education and education testing went up after he was governor, and he set a lot of the trends for that. However, he has, and also he's popular among Hispanics, or not necessarily popular, but he might have stand a chance among Hispanics, which is really the Republican Party. Its traditional base of white males is in a bit of trouble, and they don't have much feels about with white males anymore, especially among the upper class. So they're trying to branch out into Hispanics, because Hispanics, it's an unfair generality to say, or unfair stereotyping, but they do tend to be Catholic, socially conservative, and it's probably the Republican Party's best chance of becoming a relevant party again is to appeal to Hispanics. And Jeb Bush can do that. He has a Mexican wife. He speaks Spanish fluently. I live in Florida, and during the 2004 hurricane season, I was startled because he gave a speech. He turned around and gave his own speech in Spanish right afterwards, and I didn't know I really didn't know at the time that he spoke fluent Spanish. So he has a pretty solid chance of having some appeal among Hispanics in the U.S. The same thing goes for Marco Rubio, a current senator from Florida. He is Hispanic, and he's got a pretty solid record as a moderate. But with both these candidates, the Tea Party would probably take issue with them. And the Libertarian Party would probably take issue with them. So there's two very large blocks in the party itself that would have a problem with these men for being moderates, and voting for education spending or voting for some spending, that's probably no good. Jeb Bush, especially, probably doesn't have much appeal among the general American population because of who his older brother is, who his older brother is. The other name that's being floated right now is Rick Perry, which most people remember him from having a on-stage senior moment during the 2012 election year. But he's come back in the news. He retained the governorship of Texas. And it's kind of interesting because he got subpoenaed by the one Democratic stronghold in Texas, which is Austin. The district attorney for Austin had a DWI, and he told her basically they would veto funding for her organization unless she sat down, and he did so. And she charged him with abuse of power, and he got subpoenaed for it. Now, how that will turn out, I don't know, but it does. The dude actually went and got a mugshot, and it made him more popular. That's interesting. So he is a name to watch. We'll see if he can keep it together on the national stage or even makes an effort. Everyone else, the Tea Party. The Tea Party is a factor because they have threatened to rebel against moderates in the Republican Party if they put up a candidate like that. Mitt Romney's name has been floated. We don't know about him, but the Tea Party doesn't really have a broad, huge base of appeal among Americans, but they have enough that they might mess up Republican efforts to moderate the party and appeal to a broader base. The Libertarian Party, they might stand a better chance, especially the Libertarian wing of the Republicans. They don't really care. Libertarianism doesn't really care about social ills at all. What you do in your own home is your own business. And they're all about keeping the government out of things. And they've been growing more popular with the democratic social movements and universal health care. And they might have a little more broad-based appeal because of their stance on drug use, which is we don't care as long as you keep it out of the public eye. The other, on the left side, the Green Party, which is sort of a wing of the Democratic Party. I haven't heard much from them since the 2000 election year with Ralph Nader, and they had a weaker showing in 2012 than the Libertarian Party. Libertarian Party had a pretty good year in 2012. They still managed to get the 5% of the vote they were after. But maybe this year, because Democrats have been kind of disappointing with their 8 years, or will have been kind of disappointing with the 6 years they've had in office. And if it continues, the Libertarians and the Greens and third parties might stand more of a chance than they ever have. But neither the Libertarian Party or the Green Party have put forth a candidate, and the Tea Party is content with staying with the Republicans and just being a fifth column among Republicans. So we have some names. It's starting to take shape, but we still have 2 years to go. Hillary Clinton might not decide not to run, or there might be some scandal that could become attached to her name. But at this point, that's unlikely to stop her because she's been in the public eye since, since the mid-90s, and when her husband was president, rode out many a scandal, rode out the Benghazi scandal. So it's unlikely that a scandal of any sort is going to, deter her from running for president. And she's probably, unless something happens or there's another Obama sort of dark horse candidate that comes in and sweeps, it's probably going to be Hillary Clinton as a Democratic presidential nomination in 2016. And on the right, it's anyone's game yet. No one's really got the strength to declare yet. There are several names being floated, but the Republicans are fairly desperate in, trying to scratch up a candidate that can actually win the presidency and not just the party nomination. And that's where the Tea Party really comes in, because they might scuttle any moderate that comes up, which only the moderates are really going to be able to reach across the aisles and appeal to Democratic candidates. Having said that, Hillary Clinton clinching the nomination might give the Republicans a chance, because there are parts of her own party that don't care for her much. There are many independent voters that don't care for her much. So she is a controversial figure, and she's well known, got a lot of name recognition that may or may not help her. It might end up being a hindrance. It might clinch her the nomination, but on the national scale, it might hold her back. We shall see. And I'll be looking into this with some interest as things go across next year, because 2012 The Republican candidate had been running since 2004. Mitt Romney was trying to, I think even longer than that. I think I heard about him in 2000, and he just kind of sits back there doggedly in the wings. Now, Mitt Romney might be able to do it because the polls have been saying that if they were running against each other now, Mitt Romney would have beaten Obama. But the other thing is, can't tell if Mitt Romney would be able to beat Hillary. The other thing is, no one in the Republicans was really thrilled about Mitt Romney. He did not really appeal to the party base. He was just kind of their compromise candidate that they thought had a chance, and he didn't win. So he probably won't get it this year because no one really was just thrilled about Mitt Romney. But the real lesson from 2012 is that a lot of times it's presented as an Obama landslide. Not really the case because, the Republican Party didn't even like its candidate, and he still managed to put up a pretty decent fight within a couple of points in several of the swing states. So, like I said, both parties are at an all-time low among, with trust and dependability with the American people. So, it might be a third party's year if they can, pull it together and find a platform that has a sweeping base of appeal. Like if the libertarians can moderate their stance on several things. I'm not talking about Rand Paul right now. Rand Paul is another name that's been floated. He's the son of Ron Paul. Some people who supported his father don't really respect Rand Paul because he is a Republican. He's been voting along party lines with his fellow Republicans and has been a fairly moderate Republican, which his father's base of support was a very libertarian. So, there's no telling because they sort of see Rand Paul as someone who should have carried on his father's legacy, and he hasn't, more or less. He's been a fairly moderate Republican with, fiscal conservative without social conservatism. So, we'll see. He might have a chance, but maybe not as a Republican. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting election in 2016 because it's the first time that, the third parties and both third parties have really stood a chance and that both parties really needed to transform themselves and create a new platform for the new millennium. It's going to be really the first election of the new millennium, the 21st century. What happens here, because the conservatism of the later half of the 20th century has been pretty well discredited by the financial crisis and the Bush presidency and the Bush policies abroad. The Democratic Party platform of universal health care, social care has proven to be unpopular. They couldn't stick to their non-interventionism abroad. With wars, we're bombing Iraq again and we're bombing Syria again. And some people think that wouldn't have had to happen if we just kept our boots in the ground in Iraq. So, both parties' traditional stances have been widely discredited in the eyes of the American people. They will have to reinvent themselves. They will have to find a new way. Or they'll have to somehow dial back and make the American people think the old days of the 80s and 90s are returning, which I don't see really happening. It's a possibility. Nostalgia sweeps over us all. So it's going to be interesting in 2016. For Journo.com, I'm Jeff Crawford.